Alright everybody, thanks for tuning in. Last night I posted a full-length, like 20-minute long video on my CMP 1911 A1. That's a rack grade. I received it a few days ago. I did a full unboxing and discussion video, so feel free to check that out. It's a longer video. I tend to ramble, so I apologize, but I wanted to share a lot of my thoughts. But this video, I figured I would try for an abbreviated version for those who are just interested in buying from the CMP in 2025. And of course, when I say CMP, I mean the Civilian Marksmanship Program. You have to show that you're eligible with firearm related activity, and you have to be in a part of a CMP related organization in order to be eligible to buy from them. And I want to talk about the rifle program versus the 1911 program and why I pivoted, because this whole process started for me because I wanted a Garand. And I think a lot of people go to the CMP or have gone to the CMP for years for M1 Garands. And I've always loved the Garand, but I've never owned one. I've shot them before. And I decided here maybe, I don't know, a month or so ago that I would, seek to get one soon. They're always sold out in like the rack and field grades, it seems like. So I was waiting for them to kind of come back in stock. And to be honest with you, I was just kind of lazy about getting the paperwork submitted for it. And I had submitted 1911 paperwork. I submitted my application for 1911 the day they announced that their sales were resuming for the 1911 program. I printed it out, got it notarized, mailed it off. You don't have to do the notarization part for the 1911 now. They've updated it. They have an online application, so it's even easier. So if you're interested in 1911, now's kind of your time, and I'm going to talk more about that here in a minute. I really wanted a Garand here because I recently went to Springfield Armory in Springfield, Mass. I live about 40 minutes away from the Armory, and it's a National Historic Site. It's run by the National Park Service. It's probably the best firearm museum I've ever been to, outside of the ones in like Cody, Wyoming. It was so well done. There's tons and tons of firearms. There's the old machinery there. They give tours. They give talks on the machinery, on the firearms. It's definitely worth it if you're in the New England area and you're a firearm enthusiast, which I assume you are if you're watching this video, to swing by Springfield and see the historic site. Now, of course, the Springfield Armory, that was commissioned by the United States government, actually by George Washington. That has nothing to do with Springfield Armory today that manufactures firearms. Just so we're all clear. They just use the name. Similar to like Henry, for example. Henry was never actually a firearms company. Benjamin Henry, worked for Volcanic Arms and Winchester Repeating Arms. That's a whole different video. Anyway, I wanted a Garand, so I figured now's my chance. I had already applied for 1911, and so I kind of used the 1911 program as my like second choice, right? I'm a big 1911 guy. I have other 1911s, but when I went to the CMP website to print off the paperwork to finally submit it for a Garand, I noticed that all of the conditions, all of the field, the rack, the service grades, all of the grades mentioned reclaimed receivers. And this was a few days before they sent out the email and made the announcement that all of the mail order rifles, Garands, are going to be made using, or are going to be reclaimed receivers, right? These are drill rifles, essentially. If you think about honor guards for VFW posts or American Legion posts at military funerals, those rifles fire blanks. They were never built to be live fire rifles. But the receivers can be converted to shoot live rounds and ammunition. That's what the CMP is doing now. They've acquired a specific amount of these drill rifles, and they've done tons of testing where basically their gunsmiths have been able to convert them from a drill rifle inoperable firearm to a fully functional M1 Garand receiver, which is cool. But it's not, in my mind, it's not a true like USGI Garand. And that kind of put a wet blanket over my Garand ownership dreams for now. Of course, I could go overspend on Gunbroker, or Cabela's has one for $2,000 right now. That's ridiculous money for an M1, in my opinion. CMP has also stated that there's quantities of M1 Garands overseas that are in storehouses and arsenals in other countries, that they are working through the political machinations and logistics of potentially acquiring more USGI Garands and bringing them back to the States for sale for, American citizens. So the hope is not completely gone that there are still USGI Garands out there. Obviously, Springfield alone made over 6 million of them. There's literal millions of M1 Garands. There's guys with like 100 of them in their basement, right? You might be one of them watching this video. I will wait. I will wait. But this means that because I realized this is my thought process, I'm not going to be able to get a Garand now. I don't want a drill rifle. I don't want a reclaimed receiver. I'm going to get a 1911. So while the rifle market has ebbed, the 1911 inventory at CMP has flowed. They have probably, I don't know how many 1911s they have, but they have to have probably quite a few to increase the lifetime limit from 2 to 4. So that was kind of like my signal to, I've submitted my 1911 application. I got approved to purchase a 1911, but I actually put it off for about a month and a half. I got the email, and I replied to the email saying, hey, I submitted my application. I appreciate it. I'm going to kind of put it on hold right now. If I need to resubmit in the future, I will. But I'm going to pause because I wanted a Garand. So I was going to go through that process and get a Garand. And then the whole reclaim receiver thing happened. So I went back to my email and I ordered the 1911, and it showed up in like 3 days after I placed my order. Very fast, before the holiday, July 4th. So that's the story. That's how I got my 1911. So if you're somebody who has been putting off buying a 1911 from CMP, I would consider getting one now. I'm not saying they're going to run out. They have to have a lot to increase the lifetime limit to 4. But the Garand program is kind of in a holding pattern right now, at least for people who want a true, USGI issued firing M1 Garand, right? Which is me. If I'm going to spend that much money, I want one that was issued. I don't want a drill rifle that's been converted. And, I understand that component also has collectability, and it's kind of niche following, I guess, and can develop that. And the receivers will be marked reclaimed, so that's important. So that way people aren't swapping like they did with the traditional M1s. It's just not for me, I think. I don't need a Garand that bad. The 1911s, I'm a massive 1911 guy. And that was kind of like my signal from the CMP gods to be like, just submit it, just do it, just buy it. And that's what I did. I added to cart and put in my credit card information. And because I'd waited so long, I didn't know if they would even fulfill my order. I thought that they might make me wait and resubmit. And I was okay with that because I kind of got out of line and then jumped back in line in my previous position back when I submitted, when they announced the resumption of sales. So kind of in that regard, I feel a little guilty. And so maybe the gods kind of frowned on me, and that's why I got the post-war slide. But again, I addressed that in my previous video about it's fully hardened, so I'll be able to actually shoot it and enjoy that USGI 1911. Whereas I could also, you can also shoot a Colt or an Ithaca or Remington Rand slide, and it'll be fine. But you won't be able to run probably thousands of rounds of modern ammunition in it because it'll probably crack at some point. They're just not, the metallurgy is not as great as it is today, or even in the 80s when those contract slides were made for the government. So that's really about it. That was my process and my timeline. Once I added it to cart and paid, it was there in 2 days. It was super fast. I didn't get any notification that they were actually going to ship it. I didn't get an email saying, hey man, you submitted back in whatever, and you just now ordered, what gives? I never got that email. They shipped a gun, right? They shipped it to me, to my FFL. So thanks again to CMP, for processing my order. The lifetime limit's 4, so I have 3 more chances. So if I really want to, if I really want to try and get a Colt slide or a Colt frame or Remington Rand slide or whatever, I could submit again 3 more times and see what the odds are, I guess. But it's important now that because the application's online, you have to resubmit every single time. So I'll have to upload all my documentation again and again and again if I want 3 more 1911s. Whereas before you submitted, they retained all your information for I think up to a year, or maybe it's 3 years actually. The rifle program I think kept your information for 2 to 3 years on file, so that way you could buy multiple rifles within a year and not have to resubmit everything every single time. It's a ton of paperwork to manage. But with the 1911 program now, you have to resubmit every single time online if you want multiples at different points in time. You can buy 4 at a time right now. So I could have bought 4. It didn't say, hey, you can only buy 1 right now. I could have bought my lifetime limit in one go, which would have been very expensive. And I could have received 4 contract slides. I could have received 1 of each. I could have, who knows. So again, I'll say in a conclusion here, if you're somebody who's been putting off getting a 1911 from the CMP and it's something you think that you want, that you're not particular about a slide, that you just want a military issue 1911, then I think now is your best opportunity. These firearms, there are millions of 1911s made. These firearms will dry up at some point, or at least they will dry up at CMP at some point. There will probably be batches come in, batches sold. Batches come in, batches sold. We've kind of seen that already. They went from the lottery system to now a free-for-all system, like first come, first serve. So I'm sure there are people out there signing their wives up, signing their kids up, getting their lifetime limits. They have like 16 guns in their house right now. That's fine, So at some point, the greed will lead to kind of the drying up, the evaporation of USGI 1911s, similar to how the greed led to the evaporation of CMP Garands. That's my point of view. That's my theory. Could be wrong, could be inaccurate. That's fine. That's my thinking now here in July 2025. So guys, if you're not a collector, if you don't have to have a Colt and you want a USGI pistol, CMP 1911 is the way to go. Very fast, very easy, especially now you don't have to get it notarized. That was always annoying. But now you don't have to do that step. So I'd definitely check them out. Thanks for watching. Take care.